Okay. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is a master's oral defense for Lieutenant Commander Cordero. He's originally a graduate of the Spanish Naval Academy in 2001. He got his Cat A way back in 2006 and has been an operational officer within the hydrographic branch of the Spanish Navy. And today he's going to be describing to us the work he's been doing over the last 24 months, less than I would point out, which is not quite normal for a master's here. So let's have a new record here. And the topic, as he'll describe in more detail, improves sound speed control through remotely detecting strong changes in the thermocline. And as I believe it is usual, about 30 to 40 minutes is the presentation. Obviously, more compact the better, after which we'll have a session of questions, starting with the committee here and other faculty members, and then opening it up, I believe, to the rest of the group. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jose.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, for coming here this sunny, warm, and quite light morning. So, without any further ado, underwater remote sensing is mostly achieved using acoustic energy. Since the electromagnetic waves that those used in radar or radio communications do not transmit into the water. Acoustic waves do penetrate into the water column, but the trajectory and the speed depends on the local oceanographic variables, not mostly temperature and salinity. The modeling of these oceanographic conditions is of the great interest and important for hydrography at sea, since any uncertainty in these calculations will lead to errors in the modeling of the seafloor. Rapid oceanographic conditions change abruptly in summertime stratified continental shelves, where a thermocline, a boundary layer that separates the mixed upper warm water from denser and colder water below, is developed. The thermocline acts as a barrier that affects the wave tracing and also prevents an effective submarine detection from surface sonar. So, determining the conditions of the water columns is of the great interest not only for hydrographers but also in naval warfare. Normally, we take direct samples of the oceanographic variables in the water column using a ship. It's a stop. We lower a rosette full of instruments. We take it back to the surface and we analyze the information. It takes time, and we achieve resolutions, spatial resolutions about 30, 60 kilometers because we are sampling every 3 or 6 hours. But also we can take samples on the way using a moving vessel profiler. In this case, a free-fall fish with sensor on board goes down till close to the seabeds, and then we take it back to the surface and then drops back down again. So we have a continuous measurement of the variables in the water column. But we cannot use it all the time because we are constrained by the wear and tear in the hardware. So the resolution that we can achieve in a long-term mission, let's say several weeks, is about less than 10 kilometers. So which kind of perturbations are we facing in the continental shelf with the summertime stratification? Well, first, there are the Kelvin-Helmholtz waves, also known as billows. They are caused by supercritical flow over rough topography, where the shear comes above a threshold. It is just generated by the friction of the seabed and the tidal flow over the water column. And when we have some turbulence with high aspect ratio and wavelength of less than 300 meters. This is a projection of a Kelvin-Helmholtz wave on an echogram. We can see how the wave rises, overturns, and eventually collapses, mixing the water column. The final result is an eroded thermocline. The second kind of perturbation are more common in the continental shelves are internal waves. They are caused by the tidal flow interacting with the flow, either at the shelf break or over a shallow bank, and the stratified water column is taken up and down, making the thermocline to oscillate. Then this wave propagates a soliton over long distances that can reach up to hundreds of kilometers. The internal waves are characterized by a low aspect ratio and with wavelengths from a few hundred meters to several kilometers long. Here we can see in the real-time water column, the multibeam echo sounder, how the internal wave is passing behind, passing underneath, and this is the effect on the seafloor modeling. We can see a false rough topography. And this is a two-dimensional projection of a train of internal waves. So what are the effects on the thermocline of the internal waves? Well, we have two models, two relevant effects. The first one is a vertical oscillation of the thermocline, that it will change the path and length of the ray path. So meaning that we'll have an across track and a depth bias in our depth solutions. Also, depending on the orientation of the internal wave with respect to the ship course, we'll have an acrostal tilt, meaning that the slope will create a bias in the incident angle, and breaking the assumption that the water column is stratified, divided in layers of equal sound speed. And also we'll have an along track tilt, that it will make that our ray will go away from the two-dimensional plane defined by the swath. So, and two important considerations. There is no way we can avoid these perturbations. They have an environmental origin. So they will be there always, no matter how good is our equipment. And the second thing, the wavelengths are so short that any current mechanical sample can capture them. So these are my research objectives. I will try to investigate a method to account for rapid and strong changes in the thermocline. I will determine when and where this method is more effective. And finally, I will monitor the uncertainty of the sound speed structure. So, well, the data came from here. This is the INFOMAP, the Irish National Program to Map the Seabed. It's conducted in the summertime using two vessels, the Celtic Explorer and the Celtic Voyager. Both of them are equipped with multi-beam echo sounders, as well with the Simrad EK60, a well-known single-beam echo sounder, and we have a moving vessel profiler on board. This is the area of operations. This is the Celtic Sea, an area bounded by south of Ireland, United Kingdom, and France. It lies on the continental shelf with average depth of 100 meters. We can see some shallow banks in the central area. Last year's campaign was conducted just here. And then to the west and to the southwest, we see the shelf break that separates the continental shelf 200 meters from the deep ocean more than 2,000 meters deep. So we take a cross section from east to west over the survey area. We see this. One of the main characteristics of the Celtic Sea is it has a summertime stratification. During that period, an increase of solar heating and favorable weather conditions allow this heating to go deep into the water column, creating a layer of warm mixed water that is separated from the colder and denser water below by a sharp thermocline. The thermocline acts as a barrier, preventing passive mixing between these two layers. When we get shallower, the thermocline splits and finally gets mixed by the tidal fronts. Also, we can see that tidal energy generating internal waves, both at the cell break and the either side of these shallow banks in the middle, cavity banks. This is a model. It's by the Copernicus Marine Service. This is the European Union monitoring system. We can see here is a hourly model in 3 dimensions of the thermocline depth, also called ocean mix layer. And deep colors stand for shallow thermocline, and the red colors indicate mixing. So, this is the swell break, and we can see the mixing. This is the tidal fronts located at St. George Channel, Ocean Front, Nigglet Channel. How this moment of advance of retreat is controlled by the tidal flow every 12 hours, coming in and forth. Also, we can see here these oscillations that are generated here at the cell break, and also they are generated as well here at the shallow banks in the central area. If we look closer, we can see some standing waves in this area around all the shallow banks moving clockwise. We look closer into the survey area. This is the kind of oscillation we can face in. The thermocline is going up and down more than 20 meters in a scales of just a few kilometers. There is no way we can capture these oscillations. And this is our challenge. We need to survey this area. So this is a 3D view of the mixed layer depth. And we can see the survey area. And look at here, those standing waves that are oscillating clockwise around the shallow banks. So this is a plane view of the survey area. These are the lines. Every one of these 500 points represents an MVP cast. This is a section of an echogram. Each line corresponds to a section of 35 kilometers, taking 2.5 hours each at 8 knots. And we can see here this boundary layer that could be part of the tidal cycle. Each echogram corresponds to about 1/5 of the tidal cycle. And this is the resolution that we are achieving using MVPs. The separation between each one is about 8 kilometers. And if we look closer, we can see this rapid oscillation that the Copernicus model was telling us. The oscillation also has such a high frequency that the MVP cannot capture. So what we did? So we took the original EK60 echogram, and we reprojected into an 8-bit image where each pixel was georeference, signifying that the pixel dimension corresponds to 0.2 meters in height and 10 meters in the along track direction. Each image corresponds to an echogram of 125 meters of depth and 35 kilometers long. We did that for 3 different frequencies, 18, 38, and 120 kilohertz. So we can see here, this is a composite of 10 lines corresponding to 1 day approximately. This is the low frequency channel, 18, 38, and 120. And this is an overlay of the 3 frequencies together, a composite RGB, where the red stands for the 18 kilohertz channel, green for 38, and blue for 120. And if we overlay the periods of the day, we can see how this scattering layer, this boundary, is going up during the night, going down again during the day, and we can see those rapid oscillations. If we look at the full 2-week survey, we can see how this pattern is repeated, going up during the night and down during the day. So the next step was to extract the thermocline depth from the ground truth, which were our MVP samples. For that, we analyzed those 500 samples, and this is a sound speed structure in depth, and we computed within a threshold of between 15 and 65 meters depth. We computed the gradient, and we took the shallowest and deepest values that were higher than 50% of the maximum value within each MVP. You can see that in this animation. And if we pay some attention, we can see that the structure is very similar one to each other. If we overlay the 500 samples together, we can find this very characteristic structure with 2 isovelocities here and here that were oscillating about 20 meters up and down, and then a slope. The 2 isovelocity structure were separated about 20 meters per second. This is a representation of the survey. The green diamond represents our vessel, the Celtic Explorer, and then we have a blue and a red dot that correspond to the top and the bottom of the thermocline extracted from the MVPs. This is the model of Copernicus for the mixed layer depth, and on the top we can see the tide, and just underneath this is the seafloor modeling after the multibeam survey. And you can see the oscillation of the thermocline just by looking at the blue and the red dots. So what to do next? So now we have studied the top and the bottom of the thermogram for each of those 500 samples. We're going to find correlation with the scattering layer that is found on each of the echograms. So we can see here, this blue line corresponds to the location of that MVP. And we can see that distinctive boundary layer that is just between the top and the bottom of the thermocline. So this is my hypothesis. I will track the scattering layer so that I can infer the depth of the thermocline more frequently than any quantum mechanical method. So we're doing this comparison for each of the locations of the MVP on the echograms for the 3 different frequencies. So this is a MVP sample, a sample split structure, computing the gradient, we're getting the top and the bottom of the thermocline, and then at each of the locations in the echograms, we're going to extract vertical sections in the echogram corresponding to the low, medium, and high frequency, and I'm going to compute the numerical profile of the pixel intensities. We're going to get these three structures. So this is the intensity that we are seeing here in this pixel. So there is a noisy and weak signal, but within it, there is our thermocline. We need to extract it somehow. So I found out first that our signal is quite noisy. As you hear the noise, it is originated by onboard noise, interferences with other sonars. So what we did is first, we tried a low-pass filter. While a low-pass filter is compose the image, averaging the pixels within a box of different size, we can see the effects of this box. As it gets bigger, we have a more averaging effect, meaning that on one hand, we are removing the noise, but on the other hand, we are losing features. So it's a trade-off. In the final product of the low-pass filter is that this is the original numerical profile, and now the noise has been removed. The next step was trying to find the features within the signal that has been denoised. For that, first, we ran a gradient filter in a vertical direction, looking for gradient, which is looking for changes, where the intensity is changing. So the same, we tried different size, and we got is a numerical profile, center of 0, where the gradient is highlighted. But we need an extra step. We need to enhance where the gradient is higher, where the changes are rapid. We need to forget about slow changes and go for the rapid changes. And for that, we use a high-pass filter. We can see how the features are enhanced when trying different sizes, and we are using the same direction of the previous filter in the vertical direction. So what we get is a numerical profile where the rapid changes have been highlighted. Are those that are above a threshold within that window of depth between 15 and 65 meters can be considered as candidate for the depth of the thermocline. So we were running different filters, more than 1,000 combinations. We tried them at each MVP location within the echograms. This is an echogram as a section within this is the low frequency, medium frequency, high frequency, and this is the RGB composite. This is the original echogram section at the MVP location. This is how it looks visually after running the filter combination. This is the numerical profile before the filtering and after the filtering. And we have extracted these 3 points that should correspond to the depth of the thermocline. We see. This is the sound speed profile. In this case, we have a match, meaning that it's matching for the low frequency channel, medium frequency, and high frequency. In this case, we have an ambiguous solution. And then we put in this solution, here these plots correspond to the depth extracted from the different channels, high frequency, medium frequency, and low frequency. And this is the depth corresponding to the real thermocline from the ground truth. So if it is within the threshold of confidence, it will be included. And if this solution matches, then we will include the final solution here. This is the counter. The higher number of peaks inside will tell us that the filter is successful. But it wasn't always working like this. In some occasions, what we found is that, okay, it was working for some frequencies, in this case for the low frequency and medium frequency, but it wasn't working for the high frequency. In this case, the solution was ambiguous, less confidence. Only 2 out of 3 were telling us that that was the real thermocline. And in some other occasions, what happened is that only one of the frequencies was matching the depth of the thermocline, and the other ones were matching with something else. In this case, it seemed that we were detecting the top of the thermocline instead of the bottom of the thermocline. And why is that? If we look at the echograms, we can see that the backscatter is frequency dependent, meaning that we are not looking at the same thing when we are analyzing the different frequencies. So the solution wasn't good, and this is how the echogram looks. We can see the high frequencies is telling us there is a boundary layer shallower than this deepest layer corresponding to the low frequency channel. So all in all, after running all those filter combinations and taking into account the number of times that the 3 peaks were successful, well, we found that the best filter combination corresponds to that one where a low pass filter running in 300 meters along the direction and 1 meter of height, then a vertical gradient running in dimensions over 2 meters, and then a high pass filter enhancing the feature detected within that box in 6 meter height. And well, the resolution of the filter was determined by these dimensions, meaning that this filter is detecting features that are larger than 300 meters in the along that direction and bigger than 2 meters in depth. So in this graph, we can see how successful is our best filter combination. This blue line corresponds to how often we have 3 peaks matching the thermocline within an interval of confidence. In this case, only 12% were matching within less than 1 meter of the real thermocline. This success rate is increased as we decrease the number of solutions, the number of frequencies that match it, but it means that our confidence is reduced. As we make this interval of confidence wider, of course, we are getting more solutions, but also we are far from the truth. But these solutions were also differing according to the period of the day. We found that during the daytime, our solution was about 20% better than in the nighttime and the twilight. Because we will see that later, during nighttime, we have a different scattering layer. So all in all, what we got, we ran the filters along the echograms, and we got solution for every beam for the top and the bottom of the thermocline for the 3 frequencies. So low, medium, and high frequency. See here, this is how it looks on the ground, the echogram, visually after running the filter. And these are the solutions for the bottom and for the top of the thermocline in the 3 frequencies. And we can see here for the bottom of the thermocline that, well, it's matching most of the occasions. There are some patchy areas where we don't have a clear solution for some frequencies. Here, we have solution here for the medium frequency channel, and here as well. But overall, for the top of the thermocline, our results weren't good enough. Our method wasn't working for the top of the thermocline. And why is that? Because that layer was more smeared, was diffuse, affected by turbulence. It wasn't possible to track it. So all in all, analyzing just the depth solutions, we are not looking at the background. I have removed just how it visually looks. We are looking just at the depth solution. Each color represents a frequency. So in some regions, we can see that the 3 frequencies are matching a single point, but in some other parts, we have outliers. They are not matching in any way. So which one to pick? We need a unique solution for the depth of the thermocline. So our first try was just to get the deepest value falling within 3 standard deviation within a moving window, taking 2% of the data around. So with this, we are taking only one depth solution for the bottom of the thermocline. But once again, we're having some outliers. How to get rid of them? Well, for that, we're running a Hamper filter, a decision filter, that is replacing outliers falling farther to standard deviation with a median value within a 2% window or moving window around the data. And this is how it looks. So eventually, using this method, we got a single solution for the bottom of the thermocline. And that's how it looks. This is on the top, you can see the RGB composite using the 3 frequencies. This is the boundary layer. This is how it looks after running the filters. So our next step is just to compute and to determine the uncertainty in the sound speed structure now that we have got the bottom of the thermocline. But since we lack the top of the thermocline, we need to find an alternative method. So for that, this is a plot of the thickness of the thermocline along the mission, computed, extracted from the MVP cast. And we can see that it's varying 20, 25 meters, 18 meters. But if we look in a local scale, let's say less than 1 or 2 hours, we can consider that it is constant. So I am assuming that In a local scale, the thermocline thickness will not change radically. And we can say, and the implication of this is that this structure in a short-term scale is only just taken up and down, but the gradients and the isovelocity structures will be the same. It's just the same profile that's taken up and down. So I generated a synthetic profile with the average gradients and the average slope. And also I computed 10 different profiles, exactly the same, but taking 10 meters up and up to 10 meters down. And using the hydrographic tool Sound Speed Manager, I compared 2 by 2, and I got the depth bias that we're causing when using our at 65 degrees launch angle. So what I'm looking here is that the depth bias at 65 degrees launch angle that we are having as an error when using a displaced profile instead of the median one, of the average one. So now we have this graph. Those are the offsets with respect to the average profile, up and down. And those are the total propagated uncertainty that we are allowed in this area. The red line corresponds to the IHO standard for orders 1A in this case, 0.8 meters. And this is the standard that we required in this survey because we wanted to detect features that were up to 0.5 meters. So we found that the crossing is here at 6 meters. So what it's telling us is that when the thermocline is displaced up and down more than 6 meters with respect to the last truth, the last NDP cast, then we are exceeding our budget in uncertainty. And this is just a very conservative approximation because we are only considering the vertical displacements of the velocline and not the tilt because our sonar is not capable of capturing it. So eventually, that's the final product. This is how it looks, our thermocline in an RGB composite. This is the filter echogram. And now the algorithm is giving us the solution for the depth of the thermocline, but we are looking at green colors when we are not exceeding the maximum allowance in our depth error, and it's red to tell us that we are exceeding that allowance. So red means that it's time to cast again. And we are comparing every time this depth of the thermocline with the last truth, represented by these yellow diamonds. So later on, we will compare once again the result with the ground truth, and this is the solutions. This is the final results. So for the daytime, about 50% of the times, we're getting a solution within 0.5 from the truth. This result will degrade as we go into some other periods of the day, especially night and twilight. We didn't see any significant difference during the spring of mid tides. You know, during the spring tide, we were supposed to have a more intense internal wave activity, but since that part of the survey is conducted away from the south banks, we didn't notice any significant change. As we increase the confidence interval, we find that for 1.5 meters away from the truth, our result increased by 50%. And then, up to 0.5 meters beyond the truth, our results are increased a lot. But it's still not good enough, especially at night time. So, analyzing the results by the middle of the day, we can see that during the day is when we got our best results, but still in some areas, we have some patches, some areas where the results were not good. The algorithm was giving us a solution, but was taking just the median values within that area. But we don't have a real truth. On some part of the past, indeed, it was pretty good, but this algorithm to work requires two things. We need a clear stratification, and then a consistent scattering layer. Also, we need to take into account that because of the filter dimensions, we are not capturing undulations that have wavelengths shorter than 300 meters. So, for example, billows, the Kelvin Hethon waves, have been eroded, have been removed from the image. During the night time, we found something quite peculiar. We see here this structure we have in this shallow distinctive borderline, but also we have some parallel-like structure going shallower. And we have a bigger solution. I mean, every frequency was telling us a different depth. It happens more often during the night. And what is that? Well, you can see how it's evolving. It's daytime and nighttime. The scattering layer is going shallower, while the temperature is the same. So they are not mimicking the thermocline. This is because there's a pattern on the diurnal vertical migrations when the zooplankton, hiding from predators during the day, go deeper, but during the night they go shallower. So we can say that the zooplankton, in order to avoid being lunch on thesis, go to have dinner to shallower areas during the night. So regarding the internal wave detection, well, because of the smoothing, as I said before, short, long waves are not presented in this algorithm, and only the vertical oscillation can be detected. So the tilt effect of the velocline is not included as a solution. So how future work? Well, yes, there is room for improvement. First, we could improve our filter algorithms with our filters image processing and include new detection algorithms within the area of machine learning. Also, using the tools provided by the Copernicus Marine Service, some of them are providing very good models that could be complementing very well our hydrographic package developed some of the people present today. And finally, it will be worth to better investigate this apparent depression that were oscillating clockwise around the banks. And the real, as well as application for my work, I would suggest 3 different things. First, to improve this tool so that it could be on board every bridge, telling the operator when it's time to cast again when the thermocline is present with a confidence level. Second, the possibility of creating a near-time synthetic SVP so that it could be used in a ping-to-ping basis. Finally, as a military applications, use this technique on board any military vessel belonging to NATO so that we can fit the oceanographic database for the depth of the thermocline as part of the intelligence preparation of the operational environment. And just to finish my presentation, acknowledges, first of all, thank you, John. It will be very helpful, even far beyond the Call of Duty. Also to all of you guys, I've been bothering you during these 2 years, asking some questions. Most of them were silly, and you were always very responsive. And for sure, to all these organizations that were, thanks to them, I've been here for these 2 years. So, without any further ado, if there is any question, I will do my best.
I guess in the absence of a moderator, I'll be that. I think it is normal for the committee first to ask the first round of questions.
Your choice.
My choice. Well, okay, so 3 of us, Giuseppe, Andy, and myself. Perhaps, Giuseppe, if you want to ask a couple of questions, we'll rotate a couple of times through.
So, in your work, you said just frequencies. Do you think that adding an additional frequency or modifying one of the existing one would improve the output?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, indeed, originally we were using a 4 frequency, the 200 kilohertz channel, but because it was interfering with the 2440 system, we had to shut it down. But because the backscatter is frequency dependent, well, some studies suggest that using higher frequencies, we can tell the difference about where the backscatter is coming from. I mean, biological backscatter normally is more responsive to higher frequencies, rather than some scattering from microstructure, bubbles, or passive tracers. So yes, using an extra frequency, we could discriminate in a better way the origin of the scatter.
So the next question is which frequency and why?
Well, I think that having a higher frequency will help us to discriminate the biological backscatter, but that was not mimicking the thermocline. So if we can remove that signal from our solution, we can improve our success rate.
Let me follow up on that. That wasn't a question I was going to ask, but since it raised it,
So do you think that you could extract from the multi-beam echo sounder the same kind of information that you're getting from the EK60? That way you would have that higher frequency, but it wouldn't be interfering because it'd be the same sensor.
Well, if we could use a multi-beam echo sounder, then our result would be completely different. First, we will have a 3D view of the internal waves of the perturbations. Second, our resolution will be much better because of the Road 1 capabilities of multi-beam echo sounder. And yes.
So what's the impediment to doing that?
Well, my research was just limited to a single beam echo sounder. So I think we're not catching you. Can you say again, please?
So do you think it's possible to extract from the multi-beam, the operational multi-beam, the same information that you're extracting from the EK60?
Yeah, not only that, but even more.
And so is there a reason why now that we're not able to do that, or is it just a matter of adding it to the process?
Well, the thing of using a single beam echo sounder is that normally one of the steps that we would like to implement in the future is trying to use navigation echo sounder that are present in most vessels. Multi-beam echo sounder are just localized on subway vessels. But if we could make this work on single beam echo sounders that are present on board almost any vessel, then we can use the information extracted for those purposes that I just told you. So yes, using a multi-beam echo sounder, better results, but only hydrographers can use this method.
So you're thinking beyond the hydrographic.
Yeah.
Only hydrographers count.
Yeah, that's right. Who cares about everybody else? You talked about the sort of as a next step to create an alarm for the operators.
Mm-hmm.
So that would imply the ability to see these changes happening in real time as opposed to post-processing with low pass and high pass filters. I mean, is that feasible, or do you need the longer data period in order to extract these layers?
Well, the more information, the more robust, of course. But what if we could just implement not only the ground truth that we are taking from the real samples, but also the models and the statistical information that we got so far, and integrate everything in a single solution? I mean, we have the model for the Copernicus, and we can tell how good or how bad they are. Also, we have the databases from the World Ocean Atlas for other databases. And also we have what we are acquiring from the system. What if we put it together and develop some kind of tool, I don't know, Cube style, telling us that every time we have a hit, there is a level of confidence. And using that level of confidence as an approach to tell when to cast again. That would be my take.
Following on from that, bringing in some of the aiding information, these forecast models, and we're now seeing in the US with NowCoast, and the global model's been running for years. They look fantastic, and nobody's ever described those standing waves that you're showing going around the banks. But you did do some statistics in where you were looking at how well the MVP matched the Copernicus model at that location, and it wasn't that great. If you think we should start using the Copernicus model for capturing some of those longer wavelengths, how would we go and test whether they're actually reasonable? If you were to ask, saying the next master student who's going to arrive here is now going to start testing that, and the Irish very kindly give us tons of ship time to do this, it's their operations, how would you test whether the Copernicus models are actually worth using? I mean, even if they were so good, we could just forget about MVPs.
Well, they are models, so they are predictions and then reanalysis. So the model of the Thermocline developed by Copernicus was telling us a different parameter. Indeed, something was quite shallower, and because it was shallower, it was affected by turbulence in the surface, mostly by summer gales. So eventually we found out that there was like a shift of about 20 meters between the real Thermocline and the model by Copernicus. But indeed, the variability that was presented was good enough. But if we just forget about the model of the Thermocline by Copernicus and we look about some other models, for example, chlorophyll, about temperature and salinity, we can create in an hourly basis and a 2 by 2 kilometer resolution a synthetic sound field profile. And then it would be a good shot just to try once at sea and compare it with the thesis.
Okay. One of the other things I was curious, and it's feeding on these other questions about using the multi-beam water column as well. We have been looking at that, but it's a little noisier, but it's higher resolution. How would you combine the two? You're tracking over longer wavelengths with the EK. How would you use that to help the noisier but higher resolution multi-beam data, do you think? The multi-beam water column, I should say.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, we're using a narrow band echo sounder with a wider beam, and then we have the multi-beam echo sounder, high resolution, very narrow cones for everything. So we could combine the nadir and compare the two of them. So that would be a first approach. But also the benefit of using a multi-beam is that we are getting the 3D structure. And for an internal wave, well, it's giving us lots of information. On the other hand, the processing and the noise removal is a different thing. But I think we would try to complement each other, at least for the data from the nadir.
I'll pass on again for another round in the committee if you...
It's kind of a connected question to the previous one. Assuming that you have 3 more months of time, where would you put your efforts?
In the KTC again?
3 months.
3 months. Okay, I think that the party is taking place at the shallow banks. So that will be my shot. I will go in a spring tide period around the shallow banks, try to find out about those oscillating waves, and try to find more about how the thermocline is evolving. Compare the truth with the models and came to some conclusions.
So this means that you have some concern on the repeatability of the current solution.
Well, the thing is that, for example, regarding the models, now, in last year, the models have been improved a lot. Now it's giving us some more other solutions. And I think it's worth a shot just to try them out. But yes, I think if we need to go back to the KTC, the shallow banks are the points.
So when you were talking about tracking the top and the bottom of the thermocline, I think you obviously were having more difficulty with the top than with the bottom, and I was thinking you said that the issue was that the top of the thermocline was more disrupted and diffuse, and so I wasn't sure whether you were saying that the thermocline itself, the top of the thermocline itself, was disrupted, or the ability to detect it with the scattering organism. So which?
Well, the thing is that the thermocline is not just a single line; it's just a region that separates these two water masses. And you see that most of the backscatter is coming from the bottom. And from the top, we have issues. On one hand, because this is shallower, it's affected by turbulence from the surface, waves, winds, the ship that's up there. But also, because of the scattering is coming from inorganic and also organic material that's going up in the night, we have different layers. And at some point, those layers that are between these two parts of these two regions have a stronger backscatter. And also because that backscatter is frequency dependent, we see that for higher frequencies, in theory, we should get more response from biological backscatter rather than from sediments or something else floating in the water column. So yes, on the top, we have these interferences from the origin of the backscatter, also because of the stochastic nature of the backscatter itself, and mostly by turbulence from surface.
Okay, so both of the above, yeah. Okay.
Yes, Christos.
What other applications outside the hydrographic community can you see? I mean, could you imagine a work vessel using a single big sonar and identifying where this layer is? You know, that's very important in underwater surface warfare.
Yeah.
Do you see any application of this?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that this method, eventually, we're trying to compare is where we have a scattering layer and we have a thermocline. Are they matching? Okay. first we need a thermocline, so we need a stratification. It doesn't happen all the time anywhere, just in a limited areas during certain parts of the year. So that's the big deal. And then we find that there are a lot of single beam echo sounders for navigation, fishery, hydrography, and nowadays it seems that they are not hot any longer, but they still are useful. So if we can combine what the information that we can start from all this equipment with the models and the historical data, and using new techniques such as deep learning, using feature recognition, we can get some juice from that.
I'm kind of intrigued about the approach of using different frequencies, and I'm wondering if it actually might have led you to more trouble than it was worth. Oh, there's one one. In as much as what you're looking at with the Thermocline is, at the bottom is probably a close enough to a step-like function, but on the surface, which you're having much more difficulty defining, it is a gradient. It's a steep gradient, but it's a gradient. And as you go to different frequency sonars, which may or may not have the same pulse length, things like that, you're probably inevitably going to find it's going to key off different parts of that gradient, and depending on how the scatters are in that gradient. And I'm just wondering if the approach was to start with a much more broadband signal, something like an EK80 or something like that, I would think you'd get a much more consistent pick, and have that higher resolution that the bandwidth achieves. I just wanted, just get your comments about that, because you're much more deeply immersed in this.
Well, the thing is, we use a vector sonar, for example, the K80, that has a higher resolution, of course, but, well, only a few vessels nowadays are taking that system on board. It requires calibration, and, okay, how close we need to be from the truth? I mean, from a neighbor point of view, if we know that what a thermocline is within 5 meters, it's fine. They're looking for someone. Someone is a big thing, so it's good. As long as we know that there is a thermocline and our sonar can be affected by that, it's fine. For other investigations, such as fishery or whatever oceanographic investigation we need to develop, maybe 5 meters is not good enough. We need to find where the thermocline is, which is in confidence of 1 or less. So, yes, that's a concern.
Yeah, and I'll follow up on that second comment about how well you need to define it. And as you showed the images, it looked like with my eye, most of the times, even though your picker was having some difficulty, if I had just taken a pen, I probably could have traced the thermocline.
That's right. But that's, you need to consider two things. First, you were looking at the RGB composite. So we're just you're looking 3 frequencies meshed together. If you look at the difference at the frequencies just in a certain way, we would take a hard time. And also, we were pretty lucky because the thermocline was so sharp most of the time that you can see that you're looking at the RGB. But when it is not present or it's patchy, then it's when the algorithm can make some patches.
Yeah, and another thing I was thinking about that is that what this evolved to is in that kind of tracking is very much a seismic seismic problem.
Yeah, they are developing
and all the folks who spent thousands of years trying to trace seismic layers, there's a wealth of approaches there in terms of a more image processing approach to tracking things. It's great.
Other questions?
So did you get to look too much at what other people have done? Because there's a wealth of other people try to look at seismic profiles, other multibeam sonars to try and track the thermocline. Which is more about physical tomorrow.
I am not the first one to try to find the correlations between the backscatter and the thermocline. It was just people 40 years ago started to do this kind of research. But looking at the effects in ocean mapping, well, just a few guys. And what it's now, some Chinese researchers, what they're trying to use is just deep learning techniques, like the ones in seismic, just to try to use pattern recognition within the echogram, so that using that method, you can infer where the bottom of the thermocline is. So that would be a next step as well.
So does your algorithm have, or do you think it could have, any way of indicating when it's confident in its results?
Yeah, of course. That's one of the things that should be put in the next version. I mean, if we have only one frequency that is matching the bottom of the thermocline, it's not that reliable if we have two frequencies, or three frequencies. So the higher number of frequencies matching, there is an indication. Of course, also, if let's say for 1, 2, 3 pins we don't have a solution, well, maybe it's not an issue if, let's say, after a few seconds later, we have a consistent solution. So that would be another indication of robustness of our solution.
So something to be built in.
Yeah.
I guess this is what, depending on the nature of the thermocline and what's actually causing it, I'm not sure you'd expect the different frequencies to show it in the same spot. And that's what I was trying to. What?
To make me indicative. If you don't find them in the same spot, they actually
So something about it, yeah.
This is more, I guess, a little bit more of a comment maybe, but well, first of all, thank you. That was an amazing presentation, really interesting research. The Navy in the U.S. they've been testing these tow cables that have fiber optic sensors in them, so you can tell temperature gradient sort of another way of physically measuring it. I was wondering if you have had any experience with that, or how you think it might compare with the method that you tried.
Well, I familiar a method that was used to hand submarines some years ago, but the tractors was used on frigates. We were towing just a race of about 500 meters long. We're using low frequency sonars, sonar boys and so on. But, well, they are really expensive. You need to have to build your own library for that. And then they are very sensitive to the sea conditions. So, yes, if you are close to a submarine, probably will detect it. But taking your ship there, deploy the equipment, feed the libraries, find the operators, it's going to cost a lot.
So expense, it sounds like expense is one of the main.
Yeah, I mean, that's I'm not familiar with that method of using fiber optics, but what I'm trying to present is a method that could fit the generic database using a patrol boat, for example, just with a navigation echo sounder, sailing on a, I don't know, for example, nowadays, the submarine warfare is going to be a hot topic again. The second fleet has been recently activated, so we'll find some more frigate just surveying or sailing here in the east coast of the US. So why don't use a navigation echo sounder on board a destroyer, for example, to feed a database and try to find some useful information from that. It's free.
Not just that as well. If you can do this from navigation echo sounders, if you think about all the effort that's been done in crowdsourced bathymetry recently, one of the big issues is you have no information on sound speed. If you can derive some information on sound speed straight from the echo sounder, that's fantastic.
And some of those echo sounders are really broadband.
Just listening to some of this, should we have a bunch of ASVs wandering around the survey area with cheap echo sounders on them, then would that help us see if those Copernicus standing waves are true? Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I will give you two answers. In the first hand, never, because I want to keep my job. But on the other hand, there is a theory that would be quite useful.
So I could see some patterns of use where we have drones with these broadband garments cruising around and uploading into a cloud and then using machine learning to track many samples over space and time and actually create very dense models that then become a shared resource. Various revenue models might apply, but there's I think an obvious need for more dense measurements.
Yeah, that's right.
You're probably not at this level yet in understanding really where the patterns are. Although I think the standing wave thing is brilliant.
Well, yes, indeed. The filters I was using were not very complicated, so there's room for improvement, of course.
Do you have any recommendations when you go back? You're in uniform now. Do you consider that the Spanish Hydrographic Service will in any way change their operations based on this at all? Is there a potential for that?
Of course, I think that not only the Spanish Navy, but also well, any hydrographic office working within a Copernicus area should use their tools that free and they are really useful to the planning mission and to check the data we are acquiring, especially the possibility of having a model of the sound speed every hour in a 50 different level depth every 2 kilometers. This is something that, well, it's available for everybody.
If there are no more questions from the crowd, I guess at this point, just faculty members meet and we have a discussion, or is it just the committee actually with him? So we'll have a discussion, or do we actually meet?
No discussion with him, I think.
With him.
First we should give